Okay, welcome to another edition of Back to the Living. I'm your host, Jim Roback. Today we have George Sennett with us, who just returned from a trip to New Orleans. George, you being a musician, this had to be a highlight of the visit to the birthplace of jazz, and certainly the first Mardi Gras. And as I understand, that New Orleans is called the Big Easy. So tell me about your trip. You know, what inspired this, and how did you happen to make this trip go?
Well, you know, it's interesting because we have two people in New Orleans that decided they would start this traditional jazz camp.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of musicians around the country that love to play traditional jazz, and by traditional jazz, I mean jazz from the early 1900s through like about 1940.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, you're talking about old jazz.
Well.
And New Orleans being the birthplace of jazz would be a great place to hold this camp.
Absolutely.
So we had two ladies that started this camp, both of them musicians and singers. Mm-hmm. And so they started about 5 or 6 years ago, and they started bringing people in for these camps. And it's grown and grown and grown, and now we're up to over 100 people that attend this camp. And so the thought is that we pass on this traditional music to the younger generation, people like myself approaching 80 years old.
So what is the age group that this group is that you're involved with?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask, because we do have scholarship programs for high school level people. So we have a mix of young people and old people that attend this camp. Mm-hmm. And we get a chance to play together. And some of these young musicians are very, very good. As a matter of fact, we had a group from California this year, and they were just fantastic kids. And they played a lot, really, really well. So anyway, we get a chance to go down there. We form small groups of about 7 or 8 people in each group, and we perform. We actually practice with each group for about an hour, hour and a half, and then we switch. So we get a chance to play with all of the people that are at the camp, put together these groups, and then at a certain point in time, you solidify a group, and you get a chance to play at Preservation Hall, which is the mecca of traditional jazz in New Orleans, right? Mm-hmm. So in addition to that, then you have a final concert when you're all done, and you form a different group, and you get a chance to play in that final concert. But New Orleans is a great town, and we always get there a little bit early before registration, and we get a chance to just walk around in the streets. And we get a chance to see some great musicians that just play in the streets there in New Orleans.
Just solo.
And there's this one lady, her name is Doreen, and we call her Doreen the Clarinet Queen. And she's got a group down there that it's just her and a couple of other people, and she is a phenomenal clarinet player. Some of the very good musicians, like there's a group by the name of Tuba Skinny that also have brought up on the streets of New Orleans, and now they're playing all over the world.
Is that right?
And they're just great.
No, they like you say, they play all around the world, so they go beyond just playing on the street then.
Oh yeah, they've been playing in Europe. They played the Detroit Festival 2 years ago, and they started on the streets of New Orleans. And they're, believe it or not, they're young people, probably all under 30 years old, playing in that band. So it's great. But you do get a chance to see some very good musicians on the street, and some not so good. Wow. But when we were down there, there's always a festival going on.
Oh, is that right?
No matter what time, there's always a festival. So this year when we were down there, it was called the Tomato Festival.
Oh, tomato.
And you know, they're selling tomatoes and all this stuff. But in addition to that, they also have great musicians playing all over the place. So they have a main stage, then they have about 4 or 5 other locations where there's music going all day long. And we happened to come up to this historical park in New Orleans, which is it's like a national park run by the National Park Service. But they have a group of people, older black musicians, who are teaching the young high school age kids how to play jazz and how to play traditional New Orleans jazz.
Oh, that's even better. So this is Jackson Park then that you're talking about, or
no?
It's just a different national park.
It's right close to there.
Okay.
It's not far from there at all. But anyway, it's a great great place, and we had a great time. We just went in, sat down, and you know, these guys played for us for about a half hour. And it was, at first, it was a mix of the young kids along with the older musicians. But what a great way to, you know, come up playing that traditional kind of music. So that was great fun. And then we walked down the street a little bit further, and there's a group of kids with basically plastic pails and drumsticks, playing all these traditional New Orleans rhythms. And there's about, I don't know, 5 or 6 of these kids doing this stuff. And they're great, absolutely fantastic. They have, you know, terrific rhythm, and they just, you know, they learn all those traditional drum beats. And like I say, it's different than you would get in a marching band. It's different than you would get in a traditional type of jazz band. It's a different feel than you would get in any other kind of jazz. So they come up on that, and they really do well.
That's
but
super.
then we get to a street corner. There's another, what I would call like a brass band. The one thing I like about New Orleans, it's my favorite city, by the way.
It's got to be.
The one thing I like about New Orleans is music everywhere.
Is that right?
Wherever you go, there's music. It's just fantastic.
Constant.
But so anyway, we go through this training. We do and each group has a professional jazz musician from New Orleans or from New York or from California, who are experts in their field, leading these various small groups. So I got a chance to play with, you know, Dan Levinson, who's a well-known jazz musician from New York City, you know, great guy, and a couple of guys from New Orleans who are really top, you know, the first call guys in New Orleans. So it was fabulous to play with those guys and have them guide you through the process. But we, in addition to just, you know, learning how to play the tunes, we also have the largest, what I would call the largest second line, which is a group of people marching, playing music in New Orleans. I think they said in the last 20 years in New Orleans, we had over 100 musicians marching in this parade, and we actually start on Bourbon Street. And we march about a block and a half, and we take a right-hand turn, and then we stop at the first bar and have a beer. And then,
is this the jazz crawl then?
Yeah, right. It's kind of like the jazz crawl. And then we march down to the river, and we actually form as a matter of fact, the group that you see behind us in the picture is at the river. You can't see the river; it's over the hill, but we have a memorial service. We call out names of any of our musician friends who have died over the last year. And we play a very slow, mournful song dedicated to those people who have passed on. And then we form up in the street again, and we march.
March.
And, well, I should say stroll. We really don't march.
Okay, right.
But we stroll about 2 blocks over to Pat O'Brien's.
Oh. Oh, okay.
Okay, and then they've got all these hurricanes lined up for us, you know, over there, and which is a great drink. About 3 hurricanes, and you are flying.
You're feeling
baby.
good. You're flying high.
So we do the hurricanes, and then we march again. After the hurricanes, we get out, we march again. We back out to Bourbon Street, and then we march back to our hotel, and we basically break out for jam sessions, going to
again.
bars, you know, going to hear some great sounds around the city. So it's
Kind of a fun event then. It's really
it's a fabulous
fun and
event.
learning.
But in addition to that, we also have a poolside session where we have our singers, and we have singers that come in as well as the other instrumentalists.
Right.
The singers come in, and they've got a camp as well. So we accompany. I was lucky enough to be in the band that accompanied these singers. So we have like about 7 or 8 piece band backing up the vocalists. But we do this near a pool, and we have there's one guy now. I think it's like Dan from New York City.
Oh, is that okay?
Who takes his clarinet in the pool and plays stuff in the pool, which is fabulous. So, but then after that, we break up and we have what we call a Pajama Jam.
Pajama Jam?
So,
is this like a midnight or what?
Well, this is probably more like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. So we go to the hotel lobby, and everybody comes down in their pajamas, and we have a huge jam session in the hotel, you know, playing traditional jazz.
Doesn't wake up the guests, do they? Or
Well,
they don't
we
care?
can only go till midnight.
Oh, I see.
So, but there's music on the streets all the time.
All the time.
So that was kind of fun. That was a great time. But then we get a chance to actually take one of our groups that we've formed, and we go and have a chance to play in Preservation Hall.
So this is the unique place that everybody's got to go to.
Preservation Hall is the
A Mecca?
well, it's kind of like the Mecca. It actually wasn't established until the 1950s, but New Orleans jazz started far much earlier than that. But it's it's not a very plush place, I should say. It's got wooden benches that you sit on.
Right.
It's really old, and it's really, you know, tiny little windows that look out to the street. So, but it's
tradition.
It's a tradition to play there. So we had a chance to play our tunes and have a great time there. And then we come back and we actually practice again to put on our final concert. And our final concert is basically at our hotel.
Right.
We do we form our groups. Each group has an opportunity to perform. and we always put on a great concert. But before that, we have the Preservation Hall brass band come and actually perform for us, and they're fantastic players. And they're fantastic players. So they come in and they do their shtick, and their thing is they try to get the people involved and get them singing along and doing a lot of stuff. And at the end, they invite everybody to come up on the stage.
Everyone.
So you might have 40 musicians up there playing, the Saints Come Marching In or something like that.
I was going to ask that. Come Marching's got to be the highlight.
It is.
Yeah.
So that's always a good time. And for those people who want to stay the following day, they have another session at one of the very nice clubs in the area, the Palm Court. Palm Court is a beautiful restaurant, got a stage, and they feature music there every night. Every night. So we get a chance to play there during the day. And this is where you get a chance to play with the pros.
Okay.
You got the pros that they come in and they might be playing the piano, or they might be, and we mix it up a lot. We have different musicians come up, and it's pretty well controlled. So we have a person that assigns who's going to go up when.
I see. Okay.
So that we don't have 14 trumpets on the stage at the same time. So that works out really well.
So what time of the season is this, George? Would this be well attended, or it's something? Was it just recently that you went down there?
Well, yeah, we went down in June.
June?
Yeah.
It's a good time to go then. Is it hot?
Well, it's hot.
It's hot. Okay.
It's hot. So yeah, it gets a little warm, but most of our stuff is inside.
Okay.
The only thing that we do outside is the parade, and the Preservation Hall is non-air conditioned.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's supposed to be air conditioned. They might have a fan in there. That's about it. But that's pretty warm. But other than that, it's all inside. It's all air conditioned. So it's
with all these activities now, what time do you have to eat, and what kind of food you eat, like Creole, Cajun, or what kind of food did you have to chance other than the pub crawls, O'Brien's and such?
Well, we went to some of the nice restaurants down here. We have a favorite, I guess you'd call it a New Orleans type restaurant where you get etouffee, you get jambalaya.
Jambalaya, okay.
Jambalaya and all those southern kinds of New Orleans dishes with the special seasoning they have.
Right.
So the food is fantastic, and we've got just about any kind of restaurant you want to go to down there.
Okay.
We went to an Indian restaurant one night. We went to the New Orleans type traditional restaurants. So the food down there is fantastic.
It's fantastic, and the prices are pretty reasonable.
They're not I would say fairly competitive. Depends on where you go.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
If you want to go where the normal people go, they're okay, but you can get pretty pricey pretty quick if you want to you want to move it up a notch or two.
With this being the major thing, the jazz and all the music, what other landmarks or things that you had an opportunity to see there that one would enjoy down in New Orleans?
Well, we were obviously, our hotel was 1 block from Jackson Square.
Okay.
So we spent some time in Jackson Square, and there's always something going on there. There's tons of artists displaying their paintings.
Okay.
There's always 1 or 2 musical groups playing in that area. And last year we got a chance to go to Louis Armstrong Park.
Oh.
And they had a Cajun festival going on there.
You get lucky here with all these festivals.
Like I say, there's a festival going on all the time there. So we got a chance to go to the Cajun festival, and they played the Cajun music with the accordion and the fiddle and which was a lot of fun.
I'll bet.
So that was great. But that was pretty much.
Didn't you take a steamboat trip on the Mississippi by chance for a couple hours?
There's a paddle wheeler out there. We took a couple of years ago. We took a trip on the paddle wheeler. They had the Dukes of Dixie playing.
Dukes of Dixie?
And that's probably one of the hottest jazz bands in town. It was interesting because there's a bar right across the street. Actually, it's a German bar, believe it or not, from our hotel called Fretzels.
Fretzels?
And Fretzels always has a group playing there. So we were my wife and I were on the boat, and we were listening to the Dukes of Dixieland, and I said, well, why don't we go to Fretzels? Okay. So we walked from I don't know, it's probably half a dozen blocks. We got to Fretzels, and guess what? The piano player that was playing with the Dukes of Dixie had made it to Fretzels before we did, and he was already playing the piano there.
Oh, fabulous! So, oh my!
But that's a great place to go. It's there's no cover charge to get in.
Nothing.
You just buy a beer and you
sit there and enjoy.
Music. So it's so yeah, but most of the Bourbon Street itself right now is what can I say?
It's unique, or what?
It's very unique. I mean, you can see just about anything there. I mean, there's a lot of transvestites.
Oh, sure.
Everybody has a drink in their hands.
Was that right? Oh.
And anything goes there. I mean, everybody about midnight, everybody is half blasted, and it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But if you want to hear some music, you go to another part of town.
I see. Okay.
And there's what's the name of that street? Anyway, there's another street.
Is that I'm trying to understand, between Bourbon Street and the French Quarter, all the intertwine in New Orleans there. I'm not sure.
Well, Bourbon Street is part of the French Quarter.
Oh, is that what it is?
And that was part of the original settlement in New Orleans, and they were smart enough to put it on fairly high ground.
Okay.
So when it floods, that section of town doesn't get flooded as much as some of the others. And what was interesting is when we were taking this boat ride down the river.
Right.
They have these huge dikes that build a river along the river, and what's interesting is you're on a boat, you're going down the river, and you are actually looking over the dike down at the roofs of houses.
Is that right?
Down below the river level. So they're probably 30 feet below where we were on the river. There's houses down there.
So when these hurricanes come through,
if that wall breaks,
forget it.
Which is what happened.
Yes.
In the Katrina, was it Katrina?
Yeah, Katrina. Yes.
It flooded that whole area, and they were really in bad shape.
Oh, that's destruction, no doubt about that. So, if one were to ask the question that what would be the other items within New Orleans that one would go to New Orleans from the nostalgic point, I'm sure, plus the fact it's jazz and just a great town to visit and see everything.
Well, for me, it's music, and for other people, it's art. There's a lot of art studios there, a tremendous amount of artists. It's a kind of a unique community, the way the buildings are built, and a lot of them have balconies, which overlook the street. We were fortunate enough one night to get invited to one of the professional clarinet players' homes. It's on the second floor. Beautiful place. It's all been refinished, wood floors, balcony looking over the street, and really quite nice.
So that's the French architecture there with the flowers and everything. It's just on the boxes outside there. As you go down the streets there,
So it's really interesting. It's an interesting town, and I would highly recommend that you go there. but watch yourself on Bourbon Street.
Well, pickpocket or it's just unique people. They're like
Just
you say,
unique people. I mean, there was one guy. I got to tell the story. There was one guy. He's about 6'4". He's a very husky guy, hairy chest. Yet he's dressed in slinky see-through stockings with a little black frilly bra on. And so, just like I said, you see just about anything in New Orleans when you get there. And he's there every night.
Every night. Oh. Has he got like a box there to collect money or anything like that?
Well, he likes to, people get their pictures taken with him.
Oh, take a picture.
So he's probably making a couple bucks.
Make a couple bucks there, so you give him a buck or something like that. Have a picture. I was going to ask you about that. What's the situation on taking pictures? It's okay, but you have to ask, or
no, you normally just take the pictures.
Just take the picture.
But if they have these guys that they stand very, very still, and they're painted in
like
silver or something
mimes?
like that. Yeah.
The mimes,
And if you take their picture, they would expect
they
you to throw some money in the bucket.
Yeah,
because that's how they make their living.
Sure, exactly.
But
it's that's what we saw. Like when we were in Thailand, we were at this one festival too. There's like 6 or 7, like you say, these transvestites or whatever you want to call them, and have your pictures taken with them. I'm telling you, they're gorgeous. I imagine, but I'm sure you saw a lot of that in New Orleans. I'm sure. So same thing applies.
So, but anyway, that's pretty much the story, Jim. It was a great time, and the thing that I like is that this show, Active Living, is really about what do you do after you retire.
Absolutely.
And I know you're doing a lot of traveling. I'm doing a lot of traveling, and it's making life interesting and hopefully inspiring other people to do quite the same thing.
That's what we're trying to do, George. If we can get other people to go, I mean, it's fantastic to see what's on the world, because a lot of people ask you, why do you go on these trips? Says, why not?
Right.
There's so much to see in this world. I mean, don't live in your little sheltered domain. Think about other parts of the world, other things to see, and I mean, enjoy life, because we're here for such a short time in life. That enjoy it, because that's the best thing in life that you can do. I mean, you have your friends and family, and but at the same time, travel, whatever you can do. If it's like you now, this being the United States, now I've traveled the other parts of the world, but we got to see a little bit more about the United States. We saw a little about Western Canada a little while back, but I'd like to see more of the United States. If people are traveling, come to Active Living, and we'll put you on TV, right? And get us, give your perspective, what you saw, and so it gives us the incentive to go there and see these places. Because America is a great country. We just got to do it. Just got to do it.
Right.
It's amazing. So.
Well, I just did a trip to Oregon. It's my first trip out there, and maybe we'll do a show on that one later.
Absolutely, we got to do it. I mean, we got to get the United States involved too. United States and Canada, because there's so much here. Because I believe what I've seen is that Europe and other parts of the world have history, but we have beauty. I mean, you look from Yosemite to Yellowstone to you name it. In this country, we just have some beautiful things. I don't care that we have to see, like New Orleans, which you just came back from. So did you fly down there, or did you drive?
Oh yeah, we flew.
You flew?
Yeah.
So right into Baton Rouge, or right into New Orleans?
Right into New Orleans.
New Orleans?
Yeah.
Okay, right from Detroit then.
Yep.
That's probably the best way to do it. I know there's other things you can do going down the Mississippi River from St. Louis, go all down, to Nashville and all that. Take the steam, like a riverboat, paddle boat. That'd be a phenomenal trip there. So that's excellent. Well, okay.
I think we got to wrap it up.
All right. Well, thanks, George, for giving us a little insight into New Orleans. It was a pleasure, and to understand what was going on there, plus this jazz, traditional jazz camps, and give us a little enlightening on that. Well, we hope you to join us for another edition of Active Living in late August. I will be traveling to Croatia, Slovenia, Montenegro, and Venice, Italy. And till then, good evening and safe travel.